Welcome back to the Compressor Guru. Today, the Guru is going to finish the 15T. This is the final episode of the 15T. Even if we don't get it all recorded today, it's the final episode because we've run out of time and we have to get this machine done. So without any further ado, here's the Compressor Guru.
Thank you, camera wife. We're going to talk about a few things, and I hope you've watched enough of this series to know what I'm talking about. In the last episode, we put the wheel on after we put the aftercooler on, but fortunately, I haven't tightened the nut on the wheel yet, and it's a good thing. This can go on easy enough, but I can't get my hand in to put the bottom bracket on. So I'm going to slip the wheel back off camera. So before you put your wheel on, make sure you put your housing on around the intercooler, because this helps the airflow across the intercooler so it cools properly between stages. So Bud screwed up, the Guru's going to fix it off camera. Also, I'm just going to tell you off camera, we're going to run the line that goes from here to here to here to here. And it's just the unloader line. I'm not going to bother putting that on. Because guys, I got to tell you, I'm a little frustrated right now. We're down to one camera that works. The other camera we just spent 20 minutes on, can't get it to record.
Not to mention the two cameras that we ordered in.
We're junk.
And now we're tied up in a battle to try to get our money back so we can buy more cameras. But we're working on it.
Yeah. So we're frustrated camera-wise and work-wise, and by the time you see this, I'll have a new knee, but that's in the future. Right now, I'm waiting on getting a new knee, and I have two machines completely finished, this being one of them. The other one we're not doing on camera. Anyway, so enough of that. We have to put a safety valve on top of the intercooler. We'll do that off camera, but the intercooler's got a 1/2-inch port for a large blow-off valve that's set for 100 pounds to protect it. We're not showing that. Let's get to what we are going to show. So, first things first, we have two that came out of the old compressors that were scrapped out. This one may work fine as far as this goes, but it had the oblong holes in, which I'll explain in a minute, but the bolts had come loose and wobbled inside of these holes, further ovaling them out and oblonging them. And so we were going to replace this, but we had a good one out of the other compressor. Beautiful. Except this is for another machine, which I don't even know how this got screwed up in this mess, but this had to be in the other machine, and when the bolts came loose in that one, it's a long story, but if you look at the distance between these two bolts, it is not the distance between these two bolts. See how these bolt holes are ovaled? Mm-hmm. That's factory done. This will fit either the narrow ones like this crankshaft is, or the wide one like this crankshaft would fit. So we had a damaged centrifugal unloader. We have a perfectly good centrifugal unloader, it wouldn't fit. And this is why we're doing another episode now, because we had to order this one in so we could finish this job. So I've already taken brake clean and cleaned these holes out real nice and dry. I also cleaned the bolts that go in there, and they're real nice and clean also.
Okay.
So these bolts are nice and clean. These bolts are the ones that have the holes in them, and we'll wrap them with lacing wire.
All right, let me zero in. Oh, there's the hole.
You'll notice this is the center of the crankshaft here, but no, this is the center of the journal. the center of the crankshaft is going to be right here. So this will actually bolt on like that. And I'm going to put the bolts in, get it set, then I'll take one bolt out at a time and then Loctite them. And that's the way it'll be. So I got my Loctite clear over there.
So folks, I apologize since I only have one camera. There's going to be a lot of zooming in and out and moving around, and I'm not sure how much the Guru is going to be able to take care of when he edits.
Yeah. So tell us how badly we really need a new camera. Leave it in the comments, because every time you leave a comment, it helps the algorithm. So go ahead and remind us that Bud's the idiot and Guru's the one that really does the good work here. Don't worry about hurting Bud's feelings. He can handle it.
He doesn't really have feelings. Well, maybe he does. Well, look at how nicely it stays up there now.
Oh, I screwed it in a little further.
I know, and you put Loctite on.
Well, that didn't keep it.
Not yet, it's not dry.
No.
Does Loctite actually dry?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's something else that's gone out of sight on inflation. The price of Loctite sure went up too. Leave the camera, go over there and hold the wheel. Please.
Is that what's happening as the wheel is turning?
Yeah, the whole thing's turning. Click. Click. Thank you. Those are now properly torqued. So this is actually take 2 on the wire, because I didn't like the way take 1 went. We actually took them back off, and I did not like the way they had gone together. So we're redoing it again. So the last time I did this, these were almost straight across and didn't really crisscross very well. This is much better. I will say this, guys, it's much better to redo something in the shop than to have a warranty call. That looks much better.
Nice job, Guru.
Thank you. It's a little better. Okay, so we're going to take and put this cover plate on, and then we're going to install the unloader valve. So you notice when I was doing these, I crisscrossed because this is a cast iron plate and we didn't want it having undue stress and breaking because it wasn't drawn down evenly. Now, off camera, I took the unloader valve out. In the new kit, we got a new unloader pin, which is significantly longer than the one that came out. The O-ring is not on it yet, and we'll put that on after we get our setting, and then, well, just keep watching. There's a little hole in there that this will slide through. Now, the end of this pin is against this mechanism.
Hold that mechanism out to the side a little so I can, there you go.
And when the machine spins, that drops in. When the machine stops, that drops out. And what that does, it moves this pin.
It moves which pin?
It moves this pin in and out of that hole. And when that pin is pushed out when the machine shuts down, it operates this valve. It's like a Schrader valve or a tire valve on the guts of your tire. So what we're going to do is we're going to screw this in, and we're going to find the distance to where I can touch that. Now we have another test we might do if I can't feel it good. There, just right there, we are touching the end of that pin. I can tell by the way it tightened up right there. Okay, so if you look right here, we have a gap. And we're going to figure out how many of these copper washers. These are all the copper washers that came off of the two valves on the two bad compressors. So I'm going to take, and we're going to take a little stack. It'll obviously take 3. Let's see if it will take 4. It won't take 4. I'm going to put 3 of these copper washers in here. And what we actually want it to do, right now it should be on, even though it's not, when the machine shut down, we want that valve depressed. Right there it should be depressing and letting air out. So we're going to take and we're going to put those 3 on. And we're going to put that back in there. And I'm going to take an air hose and I'm going to hook a port right there. Well, just stay tuned. So folks, the first time I put this on, I put 3 of the copper washers on. And I pressurized it, and I wasn't getting any air into the crankcase. So what I did is I took one of these copper washers out, and there's only 2 in there now, and it's properly set. watch the when I did that before, this valve wasn't open and it was holding all the pressure right here, not leaking down anywhere. So we got the right distance. And by the way, there's an order to this. We put the plate on. We torqued the bolts up, even though it was by hand torquing. But we put the bolts on, torqued them up with the gasket, and then we do our setting. Folks, if you have it set too deep, the valve's open all the time, you'll build pressure in the crankcase, and you'll the line that goes here, I'll show you. No, I may not show you. The line that goes here from here will get hot because it's blowing discharge air into the crankcase when it's supposed to be locked up and not blowing anything. So now we're going to put our O-ring on now that we have the proper distance set. And there's a tiny little O-ring.
Wait, do I get there? I'm going to zoom that a little. A tiny little O-ring.
Yep, now that we have our distance set, we're going to put the O-ring on because I had to make sure I could get it out of there and would move easy enough I could get the valve adjustment made. You're going to have to imagine this because I don't think I can show it to you.
Okay.
So the O-ring's now installed, and by the way, it's real tough to get up over that shaft, but I actually went to Parker Seal and O-ring school in the early 80s, and they told us that a Buna N, which that's what this is, O-ring can stretch to 150% of its size, snap back, and be just fine. So I'm not worried that I ruined that O-ring putting it over. It's just a tight fit. Now I put a drop of oil on it, and I'm going to slide it back in for its permanent installation. And that's where it goes. Now we're going to take this with the two spacers and run it in, and it should be perfectly adjusted. And there's no way to tell if it isn't because I can't run the machine right now.
Can you still check it with the air?
It'll just check open.
That's a big crescent wrench.
Doesn't hurt. Okay. If we put one more copper washer in there, it won't open when it's in this position. We want it opened in this position just like it is so it leaks the air. That's how these start with no load. And there you go. So I'm going to take my plug out.
Why are we taking it out?
Because there's a fitting that goes in there. This was for test purposes.
Oh, I see, just that little doohickey on the end.
Yeah, this is technically called a plug. It's what goes in an air tool.
Yeah, it looks like a doohickey.
Yeah, you and your doohickeys. Okay, guys, the last thing I'm going to show you on camera, by the way, this hole, we'll get to the last thing I'm going to show you on camera, but this hole is where the low oil shutdown switch should mount. However, this plate came off the other machine which did not have a low oil shutdown switch, and this one, the low oil shutdown baffle that was mounted to this plate was damaged. So we're just going to put a plate plug in here and eliminate the low oil shutdown. And it's going back to the customer like that. Last thing I want to show you. This is a check valve, and it permits the flow to go Did you put that little awl back up?
Yeah, you told me to.
So this is a check valve that actually lets the air breathe from the high pressure head to this valve. It's a check valve that lets air go in this direction, and it will not let air go back up this way. So when this valve's closed, this air, it doesn't matter that there's a check valve here, but this air won't go that way.
Where do you screw that?
Goes in right here.
Oh, wait a minute.
There it goes. So there's a check valve here that lets air flow in this direction. This line will connect from here to here. When this is running, this valve will be closed. When it shuts down, this valve opens and lets the pressure from the intercooler and this part of the head, the suction side of the high pressure head, be discharged into the crankcase. Guys, I'm going to put the lines on. I'm going to fix what Bud screwed up in the last episode and put that guard around the cooler. I'm going to put a pipe plug here. I'm going to put the plug here, put the dipstick in, run a line from here to here, and this machine's done.
Yay!
And it's all going to happen off camera because I have a hard time getting the camera wife here. She's got a pretty busy schedule too. So guys, I told you we'd go over the numbers at the end of this series. It's the end of the series. And before I go over the numbers, I want to go over something that when I was editing and looking at these, we didn't film something that was crucial. When we put the aftercooler on, we tightened things up and I didn't really check anything. But there's an alignment issue because the two low pressures are tied together with a cast iron manifold. What we didn't do when we put the intercooler on, we just put these 3 bolts in so it was in place. And then we got busy with other things, shut the cameras off, and I had to come back because here and here have to be on the same plane because this manifold doesn't flex. This and this have to move to match these 2 gaskets here. So I loosened these bolts on the flange on these 2 cylinders, the 2 low pressure cylinders. After I had the cylinders loose, which I loosened these, I made sure the cylinders were loose. I tightened these gaskets tightened right up, and then I retightened these cylinder bolts.
Is it only those 2 bolts or all 4 bolts on there?
Oh, I had all 4 bolts. All 4 bolts on each cylinder had to be loosened.
Okay.
And as far as the high pressure cylinder, there's enough flex in the copper lines that connect the high pressure to the low pressure. It was fine. We didn't have to adjust that one. But the plane that has to be matched is on these 2 cylinders. And if you'll look, this doesn't have as much gap from this square casting as it does here. So they've allowed for the crankcase, but I just threw it on, forgot about it, then I fixed it, but I never showed you guys how we fixed it. And this is a crucial piece of the puzzle to put together. So this machine's ready to ship. The check valve's on, the lines are all installed, the unloader valve is installed, the cylinder check valve is installed. This is ready to go. I might throw a little more paint on it before it goes out the door. But that all being said, the one thing I told you at the beginning of this series is we'd go over the numbers at the end of the series. And I do not know what a new machine cost. I should have got that for you, but I don't know. But the customer knows because he bought a new machine, just a bare pump. He bought it directly off Ingersoll. And when I called him and gave him an estimate on rebuilding one of these pumps, I gave him the numbers. He said, fix it. He almost seemed anxious. So I'm wondering if I worked too cheap. Anyway, so going over the numbers real quick, the big stuff. The overhaul kit, which includes the rings, the rods, the valve parts, all the gaskets, the main bearings, the rod bearing. That kit is only $747. So by doing this, you can save yourself a lot of money. Now this machine and the other machine were trashed pretty bad. We robbed a few parts off the other machine to make this one a little cheaper. It needed all 3 cylinders. The high pressure cylinder was about $1.40. The 2 low pressure cylinders were about $3.50. And I'm giving you about, so I'll give you the bottom line here in a minute. Now, John in Panama mentioned he was looking forward to seeing me install, clean, repair, and reinstall the pilot valve and the cylinder relief valve. Well, John, I hate to disappoint you, but that cylinder relief valve was $26. I'm not messing with it for $26. If I spend a half hour fiddling with that valve, it already costs more than replacing the valve. The unloader valve was $28.60. So once again, we're not messing with these. We're simply replacing them because the aftermarket parts that we have are so well valued, it's ridiculous to try to fix these small, cheap parts. We needed all 3 wrist pins. We were able to save 2 pistons. So we bought 2 wrist pins and we bought 1 piston assembly. The wrist pins were cheap, they were $12, $15. The piston assembly was an incredible deal at $85. We had 5 quarts of oil in it. We sell AMSoil by the quart for $17.89. And 2 of the things that slowed us down at the end of the rebuild were the unloader towers. And those unloader towers were $53 for the pair of low pressures, and they were $27 for the 1 high pressure. So, and the last thing that messed us up was early in this episode where we were putting the unloader weights on, the unloader and the cap, and it was just short of $100. So bottom line, the rebuild cost with labor, we're at $46.70.24, and the customer jumped at getting this fixed. So I'm really curious what this machine cost new out of Ingersoll, but I told you I'd run the numbers for you before we finish this series. And folks, there's the numbers. We had labor that we didn't charge for in the respect of the machine shop work. I just rolled that into the labor that we bid on, and I didn't charge him the machine shop work because if I was going to do that here, which I don't have that ability, that would have been part of my labor. So Our total labor was 33 hours, and we were glad to do this. I estimated between 24 and 30, but we hit so many little snags. We ended up at 33. Guys, that's it. This is the series, 15T. 2 of them made into one, and that's it. Thank you. God bless. Have a great day.
Don't forget, folks, we sell parts. We could sell you any of the parts we used in this rebuild or any rebuild that you're doing on your machine. Just contact us through thecompressorguru.com and the guru will fix you up. Thank you for watching this episode and this whole series on the 15T. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit that little bell, and leave us comments to let us know what you think about these episodes or what episodes you'd like to see. Have a great day. God bless.